Kia ora no tātou, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei whakāturanga. Welcome to this webinar. We are honoured to have you all here this afternoon with us. Hoi anō, tātou ko hui hui mai nei I tēnei wā, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei wā. Tātou kia tātou, koutou kia koutou, nau mai hara mai. Ka tīmata tō tātou hui I te karakia. We're going to get our hui started with karakia. Again, welcome to you all. And it's our honour and privilege to have you all here with us today. Ka pai, ka tīmata, māku tō tātou karakia I tīmata ki roto I tēnei hui huinga, ara ko te hui tōpā nei, tēnei te mihi atu kia tātou. Kia tau te wairua ki wainganui a tātou. E ngā mātua tūpuna ko mātou tēnei I ino ana kia koutou, kia tau iho mai koutou kia mātou, kia hiki nā hoki te wairua ki roto tēnei hui huinga, kia kite ai, tātou te māramatanga kei roto I tēnei kohinga nui, ara ko ngā kōrero ka huatia mai I tēnei rā. Mana ki tōnu koutou a mātou tamariki mokopuna, a tātou kaiako, a tātou tumuaki, o tira ngā kaumātua kuia, ngā hapu, ngā tini hapu me ngā tini iwi o tō tātou motu. Tēnei ka whakawhiatai hoki atu kia koutou, e ngā mātua tūpuna mō tō koutou manaakitanga. Ia mātou I tēnei wā, kia marama pū tātou ki ngā mahi kahua mai ki wainganui a tātou. Tēnei ka tiku atu kia koutou I ienei inoi, tūturu whakamaua kia tēnā, tēnā, haumie, huie, tāiki e. Kia ora anō tātou, koutou ko hui hui mai nei kia mātou I tēnei wā, koutou te hunga mātaki, o tira ko koutou ngā kaiako tira, ko ngā tumuaki, ko ngā kaihautu o ngā kura, ko ngā memo te poari pia, o tira ko ngā kaiwhakangungu, koutou ko karanga nei, ko hara mai ki runga I te karanga o tō mātou kāhui, rako Curriculum Insights, me te Progress Study, ko mātou tēnei kua whakaatu I ngā mahi o te rā nei. He mihi tonu ki ngā hunga mate, kei ia marae, o tira kei ia rohe, koutou I tangi tonu ana, koutou e mau tonu ana ngā kākahu taratara, tēnei ka mihi atu kia koutou. Ki ngā tini tupuna hoki, ko takotohia, ko nehua I te rā nei, e oki moi mai rā. Ka hoki tonu mai ngā mihi kia tātou ko hui mai nei te rā nei, koutou anō, ka hoki tonu ngā mihi, ka hoki tonu ana ngā mihi ki ngā koutou, ngā kaimā taki I tēnei wā, no mātou te whiwhi I whai wā koutou ki te whakapiri mai kia mātou I tēnei wā, no mātou hoki te rangi Mārie, te wai Mārie, aroha mai, te wai Mārie I tō koutou kapo mai, hono mai ki tēnei o ngā whakāturanga. Nō reira, koutou ko ngā tangata neke atu te tahi rau, ko piri mai ki tēnei hui huinga, nei anō mātou ko Curriculum Insights e mihi tonu ana kia koutou I roto I ngā āhuatanga o te wā. Me mihi ka tika ki wa tātou tamariki mokopuna, mai kore ake ko rātou, e kore ki tātou whai oranga, whai tirohanga hoki ki roto I tēnei o ngā mahi. Nō reira, ki wa tātou tamariki mokopuna, anō hoki ko koutou ngā kaiako, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou, me te huihuinga nei, roto tēnei huihuinga. Tēnā tātou. Kia ora koutou. Welcome again. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's an absolute honour to have just over 130 of you join us today. Today you'll be able to see through your screens in the gallery. You'll see we have a number of team members joining us today, and we'll be sharing some kōrero around the 2024 Maths and Writing reports that have recently been released, which was yesterday. And as mentioned in my mihi, I wanted to acknowledge those of who we've lost, those who have passed away, and also those who remain in a state of pauri, grieving for those that they have lost. I would like to acknowledge those people. I come back to our mihi in regard to all of you. Kaiako mā. Kaiako mā, all of our teachers, principals, facilitators. It's an absolute honour for us to have you here with us this afternoon. So we won't drag anything out too long, koutou mā. Ka mihi kia tātou, koutou kia koutou, tēnā rā, tātou katoa. We're going to introduce our team this afternoon. I'll start with myself and then we'll move on to Charles. Then we'll move to Jenny and then we have another colleague here who's working with us. Her name is Rebecca. So he tū mihi tēnei kia koutou. Ko mere ana pāua tōku ingoa, ko hau te kai hau tu Māori. Ko hau te kai pīkau hoki o ngā kaupapa Māori ki roto I tēnei kaupapa. No Pangarua hau, he uri tēnei no Te Rarawaki hoki ana. My name is Miriana Pawa. I'm the Māori lead. I'm here and my main role is to support kaupapa Māori within the study. And I'm from Pangaru, from the metropolis of Pangaru. And I also hail from the iwi of Te Rarawaki hoki ana. So kei te mihi kia koutou. Kia ora Charles, ka tukuna kia koe.
Kia ora, Miriana. Ko Charles Da, tōku ingoa, he tangata tiriti au. Nō reira. My name's Charles Da. I'm the conceptual lead. I work at NZCR, which is one of the partners in the project. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Jenny Ward tōku ingoa, no Otapoti ahau, he tangata tiriti ahau. I'm Jenny, I'm on the leadership team here at the study, along with Charles, Miriana, and another colleague of ours, David. I'm based here at Otago in Otapoti, Dunedin, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of our team's work with you today.
Kia ora, ko Rebecca Richardson tōku ingoa. I am the communications advisor here. So it's lovely to join.
Ka pai tēnā hoki koutou I oku hoa mahi, tēnā koutou I roto I ngā āhuatanga o te wā. Okay, whānau. Well, again, we're really happy to have you all with us this afternoon and we hope what we share today is going to be helpful for you. Actually, I have no doubt it will be. Just a couple of things before we hand over to Jenny, to get us started in regard to what we do and he hato mātou kaupapa. Couple of things, and there are a couple of buttons on your screen, and there should be a button or along the tab that actually says Q&A, the two letters Q&A. So there, if you wanted to ask a question, you're welcome to write your question into there. We'll sort those questions, and what we'll do at the end is we'll find common questions. That's our aim to do that. And also we'll cover a session right at the end where we'll try and answer some of those as well as we can. Ka pai? So Q&A, if you have a question, write your questions into there and we'll collate those and we will be answering some of those towards the end of this presentation. Ka pai? Also, the other thing is that if you have some colleagues that couldn't make it today, or if you'd like to share this website with others to help them understand the reports that have been released and the kōrero that we shared today, this has been recorded. So if you wanted to pick up that recording, it will be on our website, on the Curriculum Insights and Progress Study website, and I will get Rebecca to share that address later on towards the end of this presentation. Ka pai tātou mā. Well, we're ready to get going, and I'm going to hand the toko over to Jenny, who will get us started and talk about our kaupapa. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. Thanks, Miriana. Tēnā koutou katoa, and I extend that warm welcome to you again. Just a brief note before we get on to the actual guts of it, for any reporters who may be here today, we are happy for you to use the information that we present here as background information, but if you'd like to quote us in any way, can you please contact us, just to confirm what that would look like. So thank you very much. Miriana, I think we might as well go straight to slide 4. Miriana's doing the slides for us today. She's a technical whiz. Kia ora. So before we pass over to Charles, who's going to take us through some of the results, I just wanted to give a really brief introduction to the study itself, because it is new and there's not much, people are still coming to know us and what we do. So what I've got on the screen there is the purpose of the study. And as you can see, the primary purpose of the study is to generate insights. And in the study, an insight is defined as information that's been drawn from careful analysis of data, but specifically that can be used to improve outcomes for learners. So we're looking for findings that can drive actionable change. And I'm pretty sure you'll all agree with me, that is a pretty tall order. We're also focused on a couple of things. So not just the impact of the curriculum. So we might consider the impact to be things like achievement or some of the other outcomes of the curriculum that we value, but also the implementation of the curriculum. So what's it like for kids? If we're talking about social studies, how much do they do and what kinds of things do they do? How do teachers feel about it? How much PLD have they had? Alongside contextual factors that influence, that we know influence achievement. So things like student and teacher well-being, collective teacher self-efficacy, those important elements of school climate. So yeah, and all of that, we're drawing it together and to support system improvement. That's what we're working to do. So we do have a really significant whakapapa for this study that we feel really, you know, honoured to be sharing. So the work of national monitoring in New Zealand started in 1995, and those of you who have grey hairs like mine will potentially remember NEMP, and that was based here at Otago till 2010. In 2011, that transitioned to become, well, it was a new study, but similar data collection method operationalised in the field. And that was based here at Otago as well, and in partnership with NZCER, so NMSSA, and that ran through to 2022. And at the start of 2023, alongside the refreshed curriculum, the Ministry commissioned Curriculum Insights, and that again is a collaboration of Otago University and NZCER. As I mentioned, it is a ministry funded study, and it's the one study that we have that gives nationally representative information about in relation to our New Zealand curriculum. So it does complement the information in the international studies, TIMS, PIRLS, PISA, etc. But they, of course, because they're across lots of countries, focus not exactly on our curriculum. So these studies, the most recent being Curriculum Insights, bring that local information to give system level information about how all students in our system are tracking. So there are three key components of the work. Miriana, can we tick along there? Thank you. So there are three key components of the study, and probably the one you've heard all about so far is the middle one, the foundation assessment. So those are annual assessments that we do every year, reading, writing and maths, carried out primarily online by the teachers and the schools involved. In the first couple of years of the study, we did 2 foundation areas a year, so reading and maths, and then in 2024 we did writing and maths. This year and annually, we will now do reading, writing and maths every year. So we'll get a really good look at how things are progressing. So that's the one you know about, well, that you've certainly heard about from us. In terms of the other components of the study, we've got the learning area assessment. So every year we focus on 2 of the 8 learning areas of the curriculum. We're just finalising reporting on 2024 science and maths, and look forward to sharing that with you later in the year. During this time of curriculum change, we'll be focused on describing progress there. And we've got a range of reports for teachers, insights and exemplars that we think, well, we're working really hard to make them as useful as we can, and we're really looking forward to sharing them with you. The learning area assessments are carried out by teachers who we employ in Term 3 and train them up on the assessment tasks. They travel across the country, so we've got about 20 teachers right now, and out in schools, and in Term 3 altogether they'll visit just under 160 schools. So it's a big piece of work. If you're ever looking for something to do, a wee break out of the classroom, recommend you sign up and become one of our teacher researchers, or maybe someone in your school would like to. And the other thing we've got going on is a research panel of schools. So we've got 40 schools, shout out to you if any of you are here, who have signed up to work with us over time to do some nimble and responsive data collection. We do sort of a few data collection activities a year, and those have been designed to either help us design and develop research tools. So for example, we did a mode study for writing where we got kids to do 2 pieces of writing, one online and one, pen and paper based, and we compared so we could see the impact of mode on writing, which is kind of important because a lot of our writing data is coming from online assessments, so we need to know about that mode. So it lets us do things like that. And also we've got a really exciting report on Akonga Māori writing coming out shortly, where we identified 20 schools whose Māori students were experiencing strong success. Looking at the data that we had from all of the writing assessments, and we approached them and talked to them to identify some common practices among them, which we're going to share with you all. So to date, we've been sharing findings from one of the study's 3 components, these foundation assessments in reading, writing and maths, but the study is designed to generate a much wider range of insights into teaching and learning, and most of our researchers are former teachers. We're passionate about this, and we are working hard on some more products and information that we're really looking forward to sharing with you as the study progresses. So that's sort of just a wee bit of background. Before Charles takes us into some of the numbers, a little bit about what these assessments were. So you might have, I'm not sure if I said, but we work with nationally representative samples of students. So the profiles of, EQI, gender, factors like that, that you see in the national population, you see the same in our sample. And so we can be confident that the picture that we present of student achievement is an accurate picture of achievement across the country, a sample-based approach. So that's a really important point about the study. Because of our design, we can collect nationally accurate information without the need to test every student, and we're we think that's pretty cool. So maths we assessed for the second time in 2024. These are all 2024 results we're about to share with you. And writing was assessed for the first time. As Charles will share, of course, we do have some data from NMSSA in previous years that also gives us a bit more of an extended window back into the past. At each year level, there's around 70 schools involved and 1,500 students. So it's a decent chunk of students. Our statisticians all assure us, we're very safe in terms of what we're reporting. And these assessments were administered in the first couple of weeks of term 4, 2024. So the maths assessment, Miriana, is an online adaptive assessment for all 3 year levels. Miriana, can we have the next one? Brilliant. It includes audio instructions for students who would like support with reading, and there are each student, and when I say it's adaptive, if kids are getting it right, it gives them hard ones. If kids are getting it wrong, it gives them easier ones. A couple of things about that: it makes it much more accurate in terms of its ability to, assess achievement, and it also, of course, obviously, it's a much nicer experience for the student. So each student answers roughly sort of 30 to 35 questions per student from a bank of around 200 items. And we've got a couple of, example questions. You can see there's some multi-choice, some short answer response, those kinds of things. And then the writing assessment is an extended response to a prompt, a range of prompts, and then I think it's 4 different ones. And then students had the opportunity to plan their writing and write, and that was online for years 6 and 8 and paper-based for year 3. And and the teacher, we gave instructions to teachers about how to introduce the task and set it up, and then students were left to write. So there was some sort of stimulus and lead-in, and all up each of the assessments took about 40 minutes. So that's a wee bit about us, what we're doing, what we're hoping to do. Looking forward to sharing with you. And now I'll pass on to Charles for some of the results.
Kia ora, Jenny. So we're going to go through a snapshot of the results, first of all for maths and then for writing. And along the way, I'll try to provide some interpretation of what they mean and how to understand them. And then if you have some questions, obviously there's a Q&A, you can put them in there and we will do our best to answer some of them. Of course, all of these materials are available in reports that you can find on our website. So I think the first thing to understand about these foundational assessments is that we are doing them regularly, so every year. And what that's going to enable us to see is trends over time. And that's obviously going to be a really interesting thing each year, coming here and seeing another piece of data added to what's gone on. And so we can do this for the first time in mathematics, because mathematics last year was assessed by Curriculum Insights, and it's been assessed the year before in 2023 as well. So the first thing we're always asking is, like, are the students scoring any differently than what they scored last year? And obviously the longer the trend line over a greater period of time, and that's going to be pretty powerful. And that's a bit of a first for New Zealand, because we didn't do it as regularly when we had NMSSA, for instance, or NEM. It was once every 4 or 5 years. So Mariana, I'll get you to go to the next slide, and we're actually going to look at that trend line. 2 points doesn't make a trend line, but we have here scores for year 8, year 6, and year 3 for 2023 and 2024. These scores are all on the same scale. So those of you who are school leaders and work with EASTL or PAT or the PACT tool, you know about these scales where everybody from each year level can be on the same scale. And that's really, really powerful. And what you can see here is the average scale scores from one year to the next. And I guess the big piece of news is that, statistically speaking, when you bring the idea that things are just going to wobble by chance, there's no evidence here that scores have changed on average from one year to the next. We've put them all on the same scale, last year's and the year before. And what we have is that year 8, year 6, and year 3, the sample in 2024 in each case has managed to do slightly better, but it hasn't managed to do more or better enough to escape that statistical uncertainty that you get when you have samples, just like when you have a political poll. So the first piece of news, no change, statistically speaking, from 2023 to 2024. And previous to that, I think we last year also said that when we compared 2023 to NMSSA's last result, we hadn't seen a change at year 8 where we had that commonality. So at the moment, we've got a bit of a flat line that we're seeing at each year level. Some of us who don't want to be hindered by statistical chance might be sitting there going, yes, but each year level has gone up slightly. And that's true. The sample at each year level on average did score slightly better, but not enough for it to be beyond what you might have expected from a chance result. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that line being able to sort of plot over time as Curriculum Insights sort of gets embedded and these assessments become routine. Okay, we're not going to quite change slides here, because there's 2 ways of looking at this, I guess. This is really, really important. Are the scores changing? And at the moment, we're saying, no, they haven't changed on average. But the other thing we're interested in is when scores reach particular benchmarks. So the project has sat down with the new curriculum material and said, where do we think we expect students to be able to score if they're doing the kinds of things that the new curriculum material is describing? And we use the word benchmark, but basically what that is saying, are the students reaching scores that we think equate to meeting what the curriculum is actually describing? That's a really hard job at the moment, of course, because we know the curriculum has changed quite a bit and people are getting their heads around what it means. And so the mathematics one, we'd already done a benchmarking exercise with the draft that was available at the beginning of 2024 based on the 2023 results. And that had provided us with a score that we were expecting from that refreshed iteration. There's been another iteration since then, but we've decided at this stage just to stick with the same benchmarks. We have looked at the new one and we didn't think that any change that might have been signaled in there at this stage warranted changing our benchmark, especially because if we keep changing the benchmark, we're going to kind of confuse everybody if it's not communicated clearly. So we're using the same benchmark in terms of the score expectation that we applied last year. And so now we'll move to the next slide, and it shows how we're doing. So here we go. So last year we knew that the benchmarks suggested that in mathematics students were struggling to get to those benchmarks. So we've used the same ones. The scores haven't improved very much, so we get very similar kinds of results to what we did last year. 23% at year 8 meeting expectations, 30% at year 6, and 22% at year 3. What this becomes is that thing that as that trend line starts to go up, which was what we're hoping is going to happen as we put all this effort in, we're going to see improvement, and that percentage is going to change and go up as well. But that at the moment is directly comparable to the percentages you would have seen when we had the 2023 data. This time we're saying this is where our samples achieved against those same benchmarks. We can see this in another way, kind of the scores and the benchmarks all at once on the next slide. So we're going to flick over to another slide where we've got these box plots, which you may have seen before. Now, I can't actually interface with the slides, but those boxes, they show where the middle 50% of students have achieved at each year level. So for instance, you can see year 3, the middle 50% gets somewhere between about 550 and about 660. And then the lines on either side show kind of how the range of scores extends for the people who score kind of in the top 25% and the people who score in the bottom 25%. So the other thing that you can see here, as well as the distributions of scores, is those benchmark expectation scores. So for instance, at year 8, there's a big thick line showing where we would think we would like students to achieve if they were doing the kinds of things that were described in the curriculum. So one of the things I really wanted to push here is that you can see the growth between year 3, year 6, and year 8, and that growth is down to the teaching and work that Akonga are doing, Kaiako are doing, the teachers are doing, the whānau that support them are wrapping around. And this is not a trivial thing, that students don't just get better at these test items because they turn up. They get better because all of those people have worked hard to increase those scores. So there you can see how people in each year level are distributed across the scores, how many of them are reaching the benchmarks that have been set. Okay, one more last slide for mathematics before we move on to writing. It's really interesting to look at an achievement piece of data. We thought it was important at the same time to actually ask some other questions that we'll keep our eyes on each year. And the two that we chose, just nice and simple, were attitude to maths, in this case, how much they say they like learning it, and this other one, which is about their confidence in mathematics. I think I'm good at maths. That confidence one, we believe both of them are really important, and we want them to be tracking along as well as people achieving at mathematics, because we know that as people do maths, they develop identities which become quite predictive of whether they go on to do more maths or whether they go on to achieve at higher levels of maths, especially that I am good at maths. And so what you can see there is that this is the number of people that are agreeing that they either like or that they're good at it. And at year 8, there's fewer students who are agreeing compared to year 3. We don't want to convince people, I guess, that they're just good at maths just by convincing them that they are. But what we do need to realize is that academic achievement has to go along with a developing motivation to keep going, a resilience, an attitude, and a self-confidence. And that's all part of the science of learning. Just as much as schema theory is or anything like that, that people develop an identity and a point of view about themselves as learners and about each other as learners. And so we think they're good to look at the same time. Just a little snippet of information about that I think I'm good at maths is that we do see a gender discrepancy in that one, and that girls are less likely by year 8 particularly to put themselves into the strongly agree categories when they say, I think I'm good at maths. And I think that's an interesting finding. Hey, let's move on to writing. So, well, actually, before we do that, there is something more to say about mathematics, and that is what we hope to do more and more of is point to the kinds of things that students are having success with, and also point out where their challenges are. One of the things that I'm a bit like a record that just is stuck in a rut is that if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And one of the things we can do with this kind of data is we can start to say, hey, where are the areas where perhaps there was more concentration in curricula, more practice, that kind of thing. We might see some influence on the results. So in our little report and on our dashboard reports, we've provided some information about what the students were doing most of the time, some of the time, and what they were finding challenging. So this is at a national level, and it might correspond at a local level with what you're seeing. It might not, but there's certainly some areas that are new in this curriculum, or there are areas that have been brought down and are expected to be done earlier. And when the students are, given the opportunity to learn them, is probably going to be important as to when they're going to start answering those questions with more success in the actual assessment. Okay, moving on, writing. Don't want to keep you here all afternoon. So writing is the next slide. Again, we've got the same kind of scale. This time we're saying straight away, has achievement changed? You might notice that we've only got year 8 on the scale, and that's because previous to this year, the only result we had that was comparable was year 8s that were assessed in 2019. So this new project, Curriculum Insights, is doing year 8, year 6, and year 3. Previous to that, it had always been year 4 and year 8, and the year levels for Curriculum Insights correspond to the end of phases. So what do we find? Well, you probably worked it out. We didn't see a change in score when we compared 2019 to 2024 in terms of the average score. So that's, 5 years ago, kind of an interesting finding. What we'll be able to do from 2025 onwards is we're going to be able, when we have data at the end of this year, is we're going to start seeing that trend emerged 1 year at a time over those 3-year intervals that we talked about, or those 3 years that we're studying. But it's really important. What we're telling you today is that as far as we can see from our data, we've got this constant score on average in writing. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The next slide is going to tell us about the other view. Are students meeting a benchmark? In other words, a score expectation. So a group of subject matter experts have sat down with the new curriculum. They've looked at the descriptions at the end of each phase of what students should be able to do with writing. They've considered the task. They've put that all together, and they've said, there is a score that we'd like our students to be able to get to. And then we've said, okay, well, if those are the scores, here are the proportions of students that are getting there. And you can see that it starts off at 41% have met the score that they'd have liked to see the year 3s get, 33% the score we'd like to see the year 6s get to, and 24% the year 8. So it's got progressively fewer students meeting that benchmark score that's been set to match what the curriculum expectation is. Okay, I can give you another view of that, and that's the next slide. This is those distributions that, again, we can see that growth from year 3 going up to year 8. And you can also see those strong lines showing where we want the students to score at. And you can see that middle 50% in relation to those lines, and then the top 25% and the lower 25%. So definite growth. In general, though, work to do if we want the scores that the students are getting to be at the benchmarks that have been set to represent what the curriculum is expecting. All right, let's go to the next slide. Again, we're thinking that achievement information is really important, but how are students developing in terms of their identities as writers? So we asked it in slightly a different way to maths, but at year 3, they were just asked straight off, do you think you're good at writing? And 81% of them said actually yes, 90% said no. At year 6 and year 8, they were asked to actually tell us how much they agreed with the statement, I am good at writing. And you can see there that 13% strongly agree at year 6, 8% strongly agree at year 8. At the other end, 7% at year 6 didn't agree at all that they were good at writing, and that had grown to 13% at year 8. There's a real kind of dependency here between how students achieve and how they think they're good at writing, but it's also influenced by what they are told about themselves. It's also influenced by the success that they're having with a particular task they're given, and it's also influenced by what they see others achieving. And all of that is really important because it comes together and it's a strong predictor of how they're going to go on and achieve in later years. For both of these subjects, there's some more general trends which we're not going to dig deep down into, but on the next slide, we've just provided a sense of that. So we'll rip over to the next slide. You've already seen that scores vary a lot. We've got students achieving at quite different levels within each year group. And that's really interesting. It talks to the challenge of programs, of creating curricula that are going to really hit the spot for different students who are often within the same class. We've got an ongoing story in New Zealand that socioeconomic context is a massive predictor of how well students do. Students from all schools, they range from people who are doing really well to people who are struggling to do well. But when you add a socioeconomic context in there, it is important. It predicts score variation. So it is wrong to say that students who face challenges always do poorly, because that's not true at all. But it is true to say that on average, it makes a difference when you've got those achievement challenges that are to do with socioeconomic context. And we see these group differences and sometimes they're confounded within each other, but appearing too across ethnic groups in New Zealand, showing that there's a great equity issue that we have to be aware of and cope with and get a lens on through these achievement scores. It's a complex one, but it's one that's important to realize is there. I didn't mention this about writing, but I want to keep coming back to, as we develop this program, we're going to get more information to you about what students can and can't do in these assessments, and that's useful. So we haven't got a slide to show you on this, but like maths, where we talked about the kinds of things I found more challenging and less challenging, in our short report, we've actually provided some examples of the texts that students wrote and some annotations around them in terms of what they were doing well and what some of the challenges were for people in that year level. And that's really worth looking at to get an idea of what a score meeting the benchmark looked like, for instance, in terms of the real text that they wrote in the time that they had available. I guess I'm just scratching the surface today, looking at some of the achievement patterns. Yeah, that's a great starter. You can look at the actual achievement patterns more deeply by going to the reports, of course. And I think we can look forward in this project to more insights about what those things might mean and what you can take back into programs in your own schools. Okay, so that's probably me finished. So I'll hand back. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, that was a great rundown. I think we're going to go to some questions now, Rebecca. We practiced this long. Don't worry.
Kia ora, Te whānau. We've got the first question from Alistair. He says, in the reports, I note the use of provisional benchmarks. Will these change much, if any, in the future? And will that possibly make any difference to future results?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Alistair. So we've used the word provisional in relation to the 2023, to the maths benchmark. And that's because the benchmark that we've used there was derived, as Charles was explaining, subject matter experts with a process, but that process was based on the September 2023 curriculum, which of course is not the one that came into effect at the start of this year. So yes, we have used the word provisional there, but the point was that we wanted to have a good, consistent comparison as the study evolves, as the curriculum continues to evolve, because yeah, there may be more changes coming. Once the curriculum is finalised and implementation is fully embedded, we'll keep looking at, do we need to update those benchmarks? And we'll do the work we need to do that. And we will always report the scale score so that you can see is achievement changing, as well as what the proportions of students are. So it is a wee bit tricky to understand the proportions of students. You always have to understand those proportions meeting the benchmark in relation to the benchmark itself. And so if we change the benchmark, it gets confusing. So yeah, so short answer, I guess, is yes, it's the maths that we've used, the provisional, and we will update those as needed as the curriculum evolves and becomes embedded, but we will always report the scale score so that we can see the actual change more clearly. I hope that was clear, and not too garbled. Perfect.
Thanks for that. Now we've got Kristen asks, in each subject, are there aspects that children are doing better in? For example, do children score better in spelling but worse in sentence complexity?
That's exactly the kind of question that we want to ask. And at the moment, I'm probably not the right person to dig down deep into that. There is some information on the actual reports about what students have done well and where they need more steps. I can comment a little bit about mathematics, if that's allowed. And you've already seen that we've got that little panel which showed some of the areas that they were facing more challenges with. I think the big area for me, when I look at all the questions, when I look at the curriculum, and then I look at the results on those questions, when the questions are involving ideas with rational number concepts, so that's something to do with fractions or proportions or working with decimals, those things are often, there's more demand in the new curriculum, and they're often things that students are struggling to show real mastery over at the moment. So definitely that's one area where we'll see growth once we can get students dealing with those ideas with more confidence.
Wonderful. Thanks, Charles. Now we've got one from Sarah. She asks, can we have access to the tests? We're looking for tests that align with the curriculum expectations to help us make informed decisions.
I can probably answer that, Sarah, and you can probably guess the answer is unfortunately and sorry, no. As you can appreciate, it takes a lot of time, effort and resource to develop robust and reliable test items. And so we've got a bank that we keep using, and unfortunately we are not at a liberty to share them because they've been developed for our purposes, and it's important that we keep using them here for those purposes. I can let you know though we're really passionate and interested in communicating clearly the kinds of things that kids are finding difficult. So, for example, Charles is saying, kids are really struggling with that proportional, fractional number stuff. One of the things we'd love to do is provide more examples of the sorts of items that students are struggling with, to give you really clear indications of what's involved. So yeah, so we are working to support you as much as we can by sharing the nitty-gritty of the information, as it were, but unfortunately, yeah, we can't share the assessment itself. We do appreciate it's a really difficult situation you're in.
Kia ora.
Actually, Rebecca, maybe that's a good time to go to the question that came in via email. Sorry, I've just thrown it.
That's quite all right. Okay. We've got one from Mike. He says, making accurate and robust informed decisions on achievement against the new curriculum is not easy at the moment. What is your advice to schools trying to make informed decisions at the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think you have to acknowledge that that's actually right. It is really difficult at the moment as a new curriculum emerges, and there isn't a single tool that everybody can just use and work from. But what we do have is the opportunity to get our heads around the new curriculum, to interpret it for ourselves, to look at the examples, for instance, that are provided of texts in this study, or of questions from the study that are in our reports, to look at the descriptions in the teaching sequences that are actually very, very detailed, and consider what they mean in terms of changes in I guess expectation or demand. So we have to be careful, because we can't give you a single kind of specific answer to how you might go about that, but we can acknowledge that it is very, very important, and that it is complex. There are some resources at the moment that we can use to help us understand those demands, especially if we can compare back to what we know. I do know there's EASTL lookup tables that some thought's definitely been put into to try and indicate what those assessments might indicate. But I think right at this stage, as we just wait on things kind of settling a bit, those interpretations getting stronger, and those tools being developed, we do have a challenge, and we can only do our best using the resources that we have, and the knowledge that we can apply.
Wonderful. And now we've got probably time for one more question. In the maths report, how much higher is boys' achievement? And is it similar to what we've seen in the past with maths? And are there any changes or narrowing of the gap there?
You go for it, Jenny. Yeah.
Well, actually, I was just going to say, give this person some homework. So what we do see in maths is that boys' achievement is higher than girls, and that is a pattern we have seen in the past. Whether it's bigger than in the past is not something we have looked at in detail. But we could, and you could too. So if you want to dig into the results, the best way to do that is to go to the data window. So we've got on our website an interactive data window where you can switch between writing and maths, and look at either results for all students or by year level, and you can compare demographic subgroups. So you can dig into that there for yourself and see, just have a look, for yourself, because it is a great question, and the data window is quite fun to play with. So, and it's good for us to let you guys know that's there. Before Rebecca closes us off, I think the other thing we just wanted to say was that we're really sorry we haven't got time to answer all of your questions, but what we're going to attempt to do, please be patient with us, is write responses to the questions. We may paraphrase your questions, but we'll do a list of the questions that we can answer and put those up on our website, because you won't be the only ones with those questions. So so thanks very much for your attendance today.
Jenny, can I add one more thing about that
Absolutely.
gender one? Because I think it is interesting to look at the data window. So do what Jenny said and go to the data window and have a look at boys versus girls. But there are I made some interesting comments about the confidence thing being lower for girls than boys. And we do have a result at year 8 that shows a difference in achievement on average between boys and girls. And when you look at it, you can look at it just on average, but you can also see wider scores for boys compared to girls. And that's interesting too, because it means that there's not as many girls performing right at that high level. And similarly, there's more boys performing at the lower level, which, yeah, there might be something there to learn about the identities that people are creating and the opportunities that they're having, which sometimes gender becomes a factor in. And possibly it's true, but if we went back, we might have been seeing for a while that average average difference had disappeared for a while. And we need to keep our eye on this because we don't want it to open back up again. Anyway, there we go. Bit of an extra.
And kia ora, Charles. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for your questions. And if you wanted our website, as Mariana mentioned earlier, it's curriculuminsights.otago.ac.nz. But we'll make sure we'll send that through to you.
Kia ora tātou, te ahua nei kua mutu tēnei wahanga, tēnei hui topa o tātou I tēnei ahiahi. E mihi tōnana kia koutou e tō tātou rōpū, tēnei kāhui kua whakahaere ngā mahi te rānei oti rā kia koutou. Ngā kaiako, ngā tumua ki koutou te hunga mātaki tēnei kaupapa nei anō te mihi kia koutou. Just a special mihi to you all, koutou mā. We know it's the end of the day. It's Wednesday. You've all had a long day, either teaching our babies, feeding our babies, or chasing our babies. We want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And if you're travelling home after work, travel safely. And if you're going to do your shopping, shop carefully. So kai te mihi kia koutou I hono mai tēnei ahiahi. Again, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's been an absolute honour and privilege to have you all with us this afternoon. On the behalf of the team, we're very grateful. We've got a number of ways you can stay in contact with us, and also don't forget that if you weren't able to pick up some of the things inside this presentation, you'll be able to watch that on the web and on the recording on the site that Rebecca's just shared with you. Hoi anō tātou, ka waihoake ngā mihi, kia tātou, ki te tīma, kia koutou hoki I mātaki mai I tēnei ahiahi. Thank you all again for joining us this afternoon. And we're going to close our hui off with karakia whakamutunga, final prayer. So, kia tau te wairua ki wainganui a tātou. E rere, e tuku, kia wātea mai te hinengaro, te tinana me te wairua. E rere, e tuku, kia tau ai ngā manaakitanga ki tēnā o tātou. Tau mai te Māori, home ye, hui ye, tāe ki ye. Māori ora kia tātou, kia pai te rangi. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Hei kona, ka kite.